Welcome to my channel, Canny Gaming. My name is Mark, and this is episode 10 of Vranyoskaya. Well, 10 episodes, and I didn't expect that we would get this far. In episode 9, I covered the beginning of industry, and just to the side here, we built a new distillery. If you haven't seen episode 9, then go back and watch it, where we set up the distillery and we start to sell alcohol at the customs house and we start to make some money. And what I wanted to do here was to then develop the industry further. But I think we should just pause and look at something else that's been a problem in the game actually throughout. And let me just set the game running, and this is the heating plant. And if you watch the heating plant, you'll see what's fairly obvious is this black stuff. Look at all of that smoke coming out of that. And that's pollution, and that actually is a problem in our city. There's actually two issues that we haven't really covered so far in all of these videos. One is about that pollution and the effect of the health of the citizens in this city. The issue I want to look at today is this. Look at all the pollution there. Look at all of the smoke there coming out of that chimney. No, you don't see any? No, neither do I. The reason being is the power plant is not actually functioning. Now, what I had noticed was this. The red gauge is absolutely tiny. You know, the indicator there that of how much is being produced is minuscule, and I think I mentioned at some stage where I don't really understand that, because you know what's happening there, because there's 20 workers turning up here. They have the usual moan about the quality of the drinking water, but there's no other errors. And we have coal, and watch the coal dial, 180.83, 0.82, 0.81. Coal is being used up, and you know, coal is coming over from the conveyors, from the aggregate storage. Though I don't know if we can watch it and see. You unpause the game. But we should see coal on the right hand side going to the heating plant there. Is there going to be some more? It should take a couple of tons, and it only takes it fairly briefly. There's more. Get some more. Snow's fallen, of course. It's the middle of January. There's some. Right, okay. So we've had 3 lots of coal have gone up that conveyor belt on the right hand side, which is going to the heating plant. But we did not see any coal going to the power plant. And the fact is, it isn't, or it is, but only very, very rarely. And the reason, again, if you look at this when the game is playing, how slowly this coal storage runs down, 0.49, 0.48, and what will happen is it won't pull any off the conveyors until I think it has to drop at under 100 tons. So technically, the game tells you that the power plant can hold 100 tons. It's currently over 100 tons, but it is over 100 tons. It's using its internal storage, and then I think once it drops below 100 tons, it will pull another ton off the conveyors. Well, let's just pause the game and go to the heating plant, and let's watch the heating plant again. The heating plant has 80.40 tons of coal stored in it. It has a slightly smaller internal storage. The same principle. It's got more coal in it than appears to be allowed. The maximum is 80 tons. Now watch that. See how quickly that runs down? and it has, okay, it has 30 workers, 28 out of 30 workers, and the power plant only has up to a maximum of 20 workers. You see the absolute massive difference where the heating plant is ripping its way through coal. Plenty of coal then is coming up the conveyors to replace that coal the whole time, and virtually no coal is coming into the power plant. Now this is not really obvious to tell. We've got a set of dumper trucks that are coming, dropping off coal here at this aggregate unloading. They come from the customs house. I think there's 4 dumper trucks that are constantly making this journey. So there's a one. So watch, it's got 12 tons of coal. They're running on, I think they're running on a line rather than a distribution office. So watch what happens there. It's dropped off only less than 4 tons. It hasn't dropped off all of its coal. So again, this is not obvious. You see them running back and forward all the time, but in fact they're not actually dropping off coal, and it's winter. So you'd expect this is the maximum use of coal, because the heating plant is running at full, or should be running at full production, and the power plant running at full production. The aggregate storage is full. It isn't being emptied. These 4 dumper trucks are able to keep up the level. Now you could argue, well, okay, it's just simply because we've got more dumper trucks than we actually need, and that would be a perfectly reasonable conclusion, because it's not obvious that if the power plant was working properly, that the you'd be using far more coal, and therefore these lorries would, these dumper trucks would empty their load every single time. Now, why is this? And obviously your electric system works. It's complicated, and it's really even more complicated for me to show how complicated it is because of the snow. It's not easy to see all of the power lines when the background is white. They're not the easiest thing to see in the world anyway. At a distance, the overhead power lines. There's a lot of power lines around this area, and they actually crisscross each other. It's difficult to make any sort of sense out of it, but in fact they work. And if I put the overlay on, we don't have a problem with your electricity system. It could have been built much more efficiently. That would have saved money in terms of the amount of overhead lines and things like that. But at the minute, you say that all of the buildings have electricity and appear to be working without any difficulty, and that includes at night when you're using your maximum amount of electricity because all the lights are on. So the system itself is working fine, and I have to say, what I hadn't appreciated is that what's causing the problem is your setting here on the border, and the border is set to import the maximum amount of energy possible, which is 18 megawatts. Now I thought, and had played this way myself, so again I've had power plants that have just not been efficient and not really done anything, and not really understood that that's what was going on. Because I thought that if you are producing your own electricity, then it won't import power. It will only import power if you don't have your own power plant, or either you don't have any power production at all, or you don't have enough, and then it would supplement what you produce by importing. Well, that's not actually what's happening here at all. And I think nearly your whole city is being powered from power that's being imported. Now, we're paying for this, of course, we're paying for that power. Sorry, I don't want to go to the customs house. I want to go to the economic statistics. So we've got import, and if we go to all, we pay for power. Now, we don't pay an awful lot, so again, it's really difficult to tell, because it thinks, okay, we've got this quantity, it's 19,000, and it doesn't tell us 19,000 watts, obviously not tons. I assume that's 19,500 megawatts, but I'm not absolutely certain about that. But despite that being by far the highest number in terms of the quantity, it's actually one of the lower amounts of money. So you're only paying 1 ruble and a little bit over that for 1 unit of power. So, it could well be assumed, and I assumed it, that this is because we've only had to import a fairly small amount of power. But I don't think that's true. I think that is nearly the whole power we've been using the whole time. It's been imported. So actually, that gives you one thing that I think is important to learn. Not just a little bit about the mechanism of how importing and exporting works, but I think it's also the fact that power is super cheap. So at the start of the game, we're a year into this city, and this city is losing money hand over fist. And one of the most expensive things to build in this city is the power plant. That is incredibly expensive. Let me just go to it and show this. So these, you've got your very large Dnieper buildings, the ones from the, let's go back to that again. It's the tower blocks, the Dnipro flats that hold 593 people in each of them. They cost 157,000 rubles each. So they're not cheap, and there was 9 of them in this city. What else have we got to compare it with? Food and shopping. The large shopping centre is 92,000. Let me just see how much the power plant is. So we go to the vanilla coal power. It's 264,000 rubles, $250,000. So that's quite expensive. Now, we don't pay workers to go to work. It's an odd thing about this game. We don't run a capitalist economy. We don't have to pay them wages. We just simply have to let them go to our shops and get food. The idea would be that they would have some sort of vouchers or tokens or something that would allow them to get food and meat and clothes and electronics and alcohol if we provided it. We don't necessarily have to pay them a wage, but of course we've got people turning up for shifts here, up to 20, and they're not doing anything. And as I pointed out, we need to make sure we've got workers doing things to be useful. So of course we could have those 20 workers, which actually of course is 20 for each shift. We could have these turning up and working in the distillery and producing alcohol, and we could sell that alcohol instead of working in the power plant. We could have saved ourselves 250,000 rubles of not building this, and we could literally import the power for this city for anything up to 5 or 6 years. At the amount it looks like we're actually paying for power, and not had a great deal of problem with it. So it isn't something that you should dive into straight away, I think, and build a power plant. And one of the things that can be difficult is until you have your systems all working, if you have a power plant and you are totally reliant on that power plant and it stops working for any reason because your workers don't turn up for work in the winter, or whatever it happens to be, your water cuts off, or the sewage backs up, then everything else will shut down. Without power, nearly everything in the city stops working. So it is something to not necessarily dive into at the start of the game. That's what I would advise new players. Don't build a power plant immediately, because as long as you start close to the customs house, close to the border where there is a foreign power connection, that foreign power connection will work for a very long time, in terms of keeping your city working, and it's not a problem. I think where you start to get a problem is when you start expanding this republic out across the river and far away from the border. Then you might want a power plant, because you are so far away. But then you wouldn't want to import the coal. You'd want to mine your own coal. Anyway, how are we going to deal with this? And I'm going to pin that power plant. I'm going to go to the border. You see at the border that we are importing maximum. Well, there's one other thing that I need to do first before I change this, and this is that I have hooked up a power substation here to the transformer at the border. So the import is bringing power into the high voltage system, that's going off down the hill there to straight in front of us, then off to the left. The power to the right is what's then connecting to the power plant. So if you export power from one of these transformers, it appears that you cannot use the transformer to power up something like an electricity substation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhook this from my grid. I'm just going to delete that line, that overhead line. Delete that bit as well, and then I'll just put in, this isn't using much power. It's basically only for the well, I think. The distribution office doesn't even use this substation because there's a power substation just beside the distribution office. I'm going to run this across to here, and then I've got a little bit of a problem because the other one is in the way. I might be able to go through. Oh, you can just go. You can go underneath it. So I'll just hook into there, and I'm still not constructing anything, so just let that build and pause again, and you see that substation's now hooked up to the main part of the grid and isn't relying on this transformer. I'm just going to delete these cables. Don't have to. They could just stay there. I'll just tidy this up, prove the point that substation is definitely not using any connection from there. So that's that working. So let me just check that. Right, okay, the well has power. You see it lost power for just a second or two while it while the substation had to adjust to getting its power from a different transformer, but it's working there now. Right, okay, so one pause, and we have the power plant and the power connection open on the screen. I'm gonna go here and just show you the power plant right in the middle, and again we see that there's nothing really, or it doesn't appear to be anything coming out of there in terms of smoke. So let's unpause the game, and I will then reduce the import. So that doesn't seem to have any effect. Let's just reduce it further. And I think there's just a little sign that it's producing something. Now, I'm just going to pause the game there because there's one thing I didn't explain. And that is that the fact that there's any red on that gauge at all. And I think one of the things to notice here is a power substation, sorry, a power plant almost acts as a substation. You can see that even without any high voltage or medium voltage cables, it can directly power buildings that are within a couple of 100 meters. See that? When I use the view electrical connections, a number of buildings that are within, I think that the furthest away there's 266 meters, are being directly powered from the power plant, not from a substation, but from the power plant itself. But for things like the heating plant, it can get its power from somewhere else. See, it actually has 4 substations within range, so it doesn't actually really try and get much power from the power plant. It's getting most of its power from the rest of the grid, and the rest of the grid is being imported. What other buildings have we got like that? Some of these buildings are very little. I think the heating pump. Yeah, the heating pump. Oh, again, look, it has 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 substations within range, and it gets its power from, nearly all of its power from there, rather than from the heating from the power plant. And I'm just wondering if the only building that comes from the power plant maybe is the secret police. Now, that was the case when I first got this game. But since then, I have put those substations in. One which is the one close to the customs house, which is there really to power the well, but it is within range of the secret police office. And there's another one that's next to the distribution office. So, again, the secret police was getting most of its power from those 2 substations and not from the power plant. What's the distillery doing? This is a new building. Distillery is getting its power only from the power plant. So that's interesting. So that might account for this little bit of red. But it's interesting. The distillery mustn't be using an awful lot of power. You know, but because that bit of red is tiny, and of course it's not having any problems. It's not reporting that it's got any problems with not getting enough electricity. It is getting enough electricity. So, you know, but it looks like it's pretty much the only building that is drawing power out of this power plant. Anyway, what we need is to make more buildings rely on the power plant, and the way to do that is to reduce the import of from the foreign connection. Let me just run the game again. I'm going to reduce it further again. That stopped it. and suddenly it's now increased. So we are now getting more power produced by the power plant, and it will be using coal quicker. Again, it's not really standing out that that is the case, but I think you can see the reduction in the coal is now happening quicker than it was. Still not massive, and the amount on the red gauge is still not really high. So so what's happening here? Well, basically, this power plant is so big that when we've got 20 people working here, it literally can power the whole of this city now, and we know it must be because no power is currently being imported. It's powering the whole of this city and only using less than 10% of its capacity. How can I make it use more of the capacity? Because it's there. Well, if we swap over to export mode, look, we're suddenly exporting. Do you see how high the gauge went? And we have smoke. We have pollution. We don't want the pollution, but the smoke that suddenly came out there indicated that something was happening. Only briefly, but that was as I swapped over to export. And I haven't yet told it how much to export. I'm going to increase the amount of export. 10% of the capacity, and now look at the power plant production. It's much more respectable because we are, as well as the power that's going to all of the buildings in this city, we are now exporting 1.8 megawatts. I think it has a maximum of 18 megawatts, and we are now exporting 1.8. Well, can we go further? It's 20%, so up to 3.6 megawatts, and that looks fine. We've now gone further up on the red gauge on the power plant, and again, we're not burning through the coal at any ridiculous rate, but we will be drawing more coal out of the conveyors. Let me just see if we can now visually see that on the conveyors. See coal going up the conveyor on the left hand side. There's on the right hand side and the left. More. If there was, I didn't see it. It might have been so brief that I blinked. Oh, there on the left. Yes, and there on the right. Yes, it's only literally a second, you know, when they're on the left. So I think that proves the point. More coal is going into this building. You see visually with the number dropping that it drops quicker, and that coal is being used to produce power, and it wasn't before. And instead of importing power, we are currently exporting power. In other words, we will make money from this power plant. So I said, you don't have to build a power plant when you first develop a city. But if you do, and you can get it supplied with plenty of coal and workers, then you may as well use it to export power. So how far can we actually go with this? So there we're up to 30%, and the production has increased. The 19 workers, they are perfectly capable of producing. That's something like 30% of the capacity. Gone up to 40% export. Yeah, the power plant can respond to that. Now look at the amount of smoke that's being produced. Wow, we're going to get quite a lot of pollution now. And can I go further? 50%? Yeah, and basically most of the power that's now being produced by the power plant is being exported. We don't see any problems of the voltage anywhere in this city. What you would see is that if you weren't producing enough power to power all of your city, you'd see some of these numbers fluctuating. Instead of showing 229, 230, they might drop suddenly if the systems were being overloaded. And that looks absolutely fine. Can we go up further? Yeah, that did seem to increase at 60%. 70%. I don't know that I can see any increase in the capacity of the power plant. It hasn't, and 100 hasn't. So I think basically, I mean, I don't know that there's a problem of setting this to 100%, but you know, something like this, 10 megawatts, we can produce 10 megawatts, and however many megawatts the city itself is consuming from this power plant. But up till now, we must literally have been producing only maybe, I don't know, half a megawatt, and now we're up to, I don't know, 12, 13 something. I'm not really absolutely sure. We're selling 10 megawatt, but we obviously consuming a certain amount within the city. We can maybe guess it, because we've got an overlay which was voltage, and we've got another one which is wattage. How much wattage do we get? Oh, okay. That is really going to be difficult, because look, most of these wattage numbers are tiny. We'd basically have to go and add up all of those wattages. Oh look, I've got some amber numbers, as if they are struggling. They're not all green. There's a few places where they're amber, but all in the city, all of the apartment blocks and the shops, they're all green. So I wonder what's going on with those amber ones. Oh, you know what that is? I think is the amount of power going through those overhead lines is getting up to the sort of limit. You say that there's about 12 megawatts going through them. Well, they are cables which are, let me just see which, if I can tell which type of cable they are. I think they're not all these ones. Difficult to tell, but we do have cables that will only take about 10, 13, even less, 8 megawatts, 15 megawatts. So it may be that it's one of these type of cables. I'm just see if I can actually see. But it does look like they've used the highest capacity cables, which are these ones. Oh, you haven't. You haven't. Right, okay. So on the left here, there's a set of overhead cables. Look, they cross over here. This is the mess. But on the left, there's a set of overhead cables which are using the 18 megawatt high voltage cables. And similarly, on the left here is a same. Using those type of 18 megawatt things, and then both of them go into transformers. So there's a transformer here on the ground and another transformer close to it, and those two transformers are actually connected to each other, and they're connected by much smaller overhead power lines, and those much smaller power lines are using this cable, 14 megawatts. 14 megawatts. So the amber is telling us they're getting close to the limit when they're about 12 megawatts that's going through them, 11, 12 megawatts. Yeah, I think that's what that is telling us. So I think those should probably be knocked down and replaced by higher capacity cables at some stage in the future. Um, anyway, especially as I think it's those that join in the cables coming from the power plant to the cables connected to the border. I think all of the export of your powers actually runs through these two transformers that are connected by those 14 megawatts cables. I think we've proved that this is about the most that we can export, and I think one of the questions in my mind is if we build the city further, whether we want to reduce that. But this actually looks fine. We can say that all the time I've been speaking there now about those cables, this production has remained up at around 50 to 60% of its capacity. We've got all the time. We've seen this before. We've took quite a lot of interest that we're getting workers coming here all the time. It's 15 to 20 people nearly the whole time, and even in the winter, where bus systems work perfectly. But we have to be careful. Our unemployment has dropped to 7%. I'm going to build more industry. So we have to be careful that we keep this level of people up here. Now, can I? Let's just close that because I'm happy with those sentences. I want to go to the financial economy, and now what we've got is export of resources, and we've got export of power. We've exported 4,000 units of power, and we've made 4,000. So actually, we're making more from selling power than we're making from alcohol. And we could have been doing this earlier, and well, we should have been doing it earlier. So let me just see if I go to all the way back to the start of 1960. In total, we had that distillery running it's been running a couple of months. We've made 7,000 from selling alcohol. We've made 6,000 from selling power already. And I think that's easily going to outweigh the alcohol. And let me just then check the import, just to see what we had been importing. There's the power. We'd imported 21,000 over the time. That's going to stop. We're not going to import any more power, so that's going to save us money. Again, this is not an enormous amount. It's half the amount we're spending on electronics, half the amount on chemicals, electrical components, prefab panels. It's less than half of asphalt. Asphalt. It's not like we've got loads of asphalt roads here. I've built one asphalt road. We haven't gone and upgraded all of our roads. I built that road as asphalt. Most of the roads in this city are gravel. Or there was this asphalt road here that had been built by the player themselves at the start of the game. But I think some of the buildings use asphalt. You say like these depots. I think you use asphalt for those parking areas. But it's not like we've spent a huge amount of asphalt, or we've imported a huge amount of asphalt. 1,000 tons of it, and they've cost us 50,000 rubles. And then we start going into higher figures, the food, the fuel, and the things that are almost hidden, mechanical components. A tiny amount of mechanical components, 97 tons, that's nothing, and it's cost us 70,000 rubles. Clothes, we know we're selling clothes at the shops all the time, of course, that's much more visible. the reason it's the mechanical components are pretty invisible is because they're used in construction of certain buildings, and a building might only need half a ton of mechanical components. You barely see that they're being delivered and dropped off and used in the construction, but they're really expensive. Fortunately, you only need small amounts of them. You know, and of course, the downside of the power plant here is this amount of coal. So I'm not absolutely clear whether we're making a profit here, because if it costs us more to buy the coal from the border, from the customs house, than we getting by selling the power, actually we could be making a loss here. So I'd have to check that. So I think what I'd want to do is go back to this month, pause and go this month, and we have spent 3,600 on coal this month. How much have we got from selling power? Ah, well, more, and of course that coal, at least half of it, or maybe around about half of it, is going to heating, and we must have the heating. So if only half the cost of the coal is going to the power plant, it does look like we are making a profit. So yeah, so that's good. So that has solved yet another problem in this city. Another one that's really difficult to spot. Even as I said, I wondered why the gauge was so low, but it didn't appreciate what was going on, and I think I could well have made the same mistake myself in other cities, cities that I built myself, that have had the import power set on, and it basically means the power plant just doesn't do anything, even when you've got plenty of workers there. Now, how has that affected our coal aggregate? Okay, so the coal aggregate is still pretty much full. Just want to see one of the dumper trucks arrive. Are they all stuck up at the customs house? Speed it up. Not waiting all day. Oh, that's interesting. Look what's right in front of us. I hadn't really noticed that before as well, because there's a dumper truck. And what's right in front of us, the dumper truck, is behind the pylon. And it's the pylon that I was referring to. And look, the pylon is grey. It's steel. Of course it's grey. Um, and let me just get this dumper truck out the way. I just want to say what the dumper truck does. So the dumper truck is full of 12 tons of coal. Is it going to drop off? Yeah, it's dropped the whole lot off now. So again, that is proving we're using a lot more coal than we were using before. Remember, we saw that it would come loaded with 12 tons and it would only drop off about 4 or 5 tons, and then go back to the border, with more than half of its load in there. I think they're all emptying at the minute now. So, um, that's going well, and isn't a problem that the aggregate storage is running out. It's not like we're using more coal than we're delivering here. So it looks like it's about balanced, actually, because we might have had to put more dumper trucks on delivering coal here to keep up with the demand for the coal. But it looks fine. Right, okay. So the pylon is grey because I've got it on pause. Watch out what happens when I go. It went green for a second. And when I've got the game playing and I've got the electricity overlay on, you say that it was red and it's now gone amber. You only say the overlay on the buildings with the green and the numbers, but you only say the colour on the overhead lines, and you wouldn't see it on the underground lines at all unless you actually have the underground view switched on. You only see that colour when the game is playing, and that colour is red. So all of these pylons look like they're being overloaded. And again, these are, I already mentioned, these are the largest pylons you can have. Pretty sure you have used the largest ones. These ones that have 18 megawatt. Yeah, you see, that's what they would look like if I was building more beside them. They're exactly the same height, and they've got the same. You can tell from the arms that the look different. You see, if I use, say, this one, you see it looks different. Well, it's half the size anyway, or less than half the size. And that one is 6 megawatts, or the smallest one is only 4 megawatts. So of course you'd be tempted to use some of these. They're much cheaper to build, but they would be overloaded completely, and we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now. But we are actually quite close to the limit here. So how could we deal with that? I'll just put it on pause. We could deal with that because, I mentioned that this power plant acts almost like a substation within range, but it has the connections, the power connections. And if I go to a medium connection, it actually has 4 medium connections. So we can run medium connections to substations. So we've got some complicated setup where, we've got substations here, for instance. And if I trace the cables back, this one, it's got underground cables, isn't it? Yeah, it's got an underground cable that goes over here and then into a transformer. That then has overground medium voltage cables that go where? Oh, they go all the way along here. That's right, I remember them now. And then they go into that transformer. And I think that transformer then connects to that transformer. And where does that go? Then that transformer comes along with more medium voltage that comes all the way up here. It's as complicated as that. And what would be possible would be to run substations in all this part of the city direct from the power plant, from the medium voltage cables there. So that's one possibility. But the other one is the higher voltage cables. It has 2 high voltage outputs, one on the left that's already being used, so you can't see the yellow triangle thing because there's already overhead power cables connected to it. But there's this one on the right hand side, so we could put higher voltage cables in. I think what would actually make sense here would be to put use the highest capacity cables and run cables out across here. And you see that at some stage high voltage cables have been run all the way down to the sewage discharge, and they come all the way around the back of the city, you know, from up there from the border. So I think it would have made sense to just run high voltage cables from the power plant straight down to here, and then connect that off towards the sewage discharge. If you're going to use high voltage down there, and I'm not sure I would have, I think I would have used just medium voltage. But a transformer in this area would also then allow you to connect the power in the whole of the bottom of the city here. And I think that would have made sense. So I'm actually going to build them, because I'm going to build other things here. I'm going to build industry soon, and I want to make sure that we have these cables in, and that we are not going to find that we can't then fit them in later because we've put buildings that are blocking them. So let me just check, because I think I need to. And then I think we need something like I just use one of the mods that I've got, which is something like this. I think that'll do the trick. And then continue the high voltage cables into there, and let them build. And now we've got power there as well, and we can run another high voltage cable off down the hill if we needed to. As I said, the cable's already in there, but we can run 8 medium voltages off there if we needed to. And now we've got a whole load of power connections to expand our city out in this sort of area. And that's what I'm going to do. I was going to do it in this episode, but I thought I'd better deal with this power issue first. If you're getting something out of this video series, then don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. My channel's Canny Gaming, and my name's Mark, and I'm out of here.